We are united in diversity. We are very heterogeneous in our opinion.
If we do not renew our partnerships with the rest of the world, Europe will not be relevant.
We can make it if we are together as Europeans.
And looking ahead to what is next.
Do you genuinely believe that countries will manage to reach these very ambitious targets?
Good morning and welcome back here in the room and online. I'm Pieter Haak, I'm a tech reporter at Politico, and you maybe wonder, what is a tech reporter doing here when we speak about economic security? Well, tech is a vital part of the discussion around economic security. In recent years, we've seen that tech supply chains are being weaponized by certain regions. And because if you have access to certain technologies and others don't, you can use that as leverage. And leverage is, of course, power. The next half hour, we're going to speak about that, how to protect certain technologies, how Europe can protect certain technologies. And I also briefly want to mention that today is my birthday, so the best gift you can give to me is your undevoted attention the next half hour. I have three esteemed guests with me. First of all, we have Marc Lemaitre, who is the boss of the Commission's research department. We have Christophe Vrij, who is the vice president at Chips Designer ARM. And we have Maaike Okano-Heijmans, who is a researcher at Klingendahl. Welcome all. If I can go on first name basis, Maaike, maybe we can start with you, because you're from the Netherlands. And the Netherlands was in the last years a very good test case of tech supply chains that were being weaponized. Because in the Netherlands, you have this company called ASML. ASML, they make very expensive chip printing machines that make chips, actually. And the Netherlands was pressured by the US to make sure that some of the sales of ASML to China was being blocked. According to you, is chips the most sensitive area at the moment when we speak about weaponized tech supply chains, or are there other areas where you see vulnerabilities as well?
Thanks. Well, and first of all, happy birthday. And thanks for this great question. I think, indeed, a bit unwillingly, I would say, the Netherlands was pushed into a front-runner role on economic security through our American friends, and especially in the field of semiconductors, of course. So back in 2018, we were asked, my think tank, to write something on export controls, and nobody knew anything about export controls back then. So even as a think tank, you get sort of a head start. But the important point is, of course, that we have moved on. Much has happened. I think economic security is very high on the political agenda today. I'm a bit worried about the fact that our companies are not quite in line because they have different interests. I think this came up as perhaps something to pursue a little bit further. But the Dutch government speaks about economic security a lot. We speak about digital, open, strategic autonomy. That's a mouthful of dosa, but not the Indian dosa. So there's a lot of talking, a lot of instruments. And I think now we're moving more to the promote side, because protect is pretty well covered. And there's, of course, lots to do, lots to still improve on. But the partnering and the promote is felt more as really high on the agenda. Yeah. And as I said, here I think we need businesses. So there's attempts also in the Netherlands to be a leader, perhaps, in engaging businesses, but I'm not sure if we can really be said to be an example already there. Perhaps something for discussion later.
Definitely, and we have a business on stage, so let's engage with that business, Christophe. Yeah, you work for a chips design company, to be complete. You have this new reality of export controls that are being imposed, not only in the case of ASML, we've also seen with AI chips, NVIDIA, that US is blocking some of the export of these companies to China specifically. How do you navigate as a company this new reality of export controls?
First, thanks for the invitation, and I'm really glad to be here because I'm representing the business. Myself, I'm an engineer, so most people in the room are experts in politics. I'm interested in politics, but I'm not an expert. So my expertise is really the business and semiconductors. So your question is relevant. ARM is a global company. We have customers, partners, and employees all over the world in every region. And we have the same challenges than any tech company in the world. for us, we are complying to the laws of the various governments and regions, and we have to navigate this. There is no silver bullet. We don't have a magic solution. We just are doing dialogue, making sure people who create regulation understand the ecosystem. Maybe a bit later we can talk about the semiconductor ecosystem in Europe.
But do you have the feeling that because the chips industry, chips is a very complex product, it's spread all over the world, do you have the feeling that politicians here in Brussels, but also elsewhere, understand the product?
It depends actually, because there are more or less two families of chips right now in the world. You have the very classic chips, it's the strength of Europe for historical application like industry, automotive, maybe even IoT that is a bit less.
Chips for cars and stuff.
Or cars. And then you have the leading edge technology nodes that are really strategic right now for AI, cloud, etc. And I guess the answer is not the same depending which part of that industry you're looking at.
Yeah. Which part do they understand the best?
Sorry?
Which part do they understand the best, politicians?
Actually, ARM has been at the heart of both of them for many decades. But for the leading edge, AI, the challenges that are top of mind for everyone today, that's where it's really complex. We talked about ASML. It's almost impossible today to fabricate a leading edge chip without somebody, a company that is based in the Netherlands. You have manufacturing, the main leaders in Asia. You have design a lot in America, and so it's all interconnected. And I don't believe, it is possible to do this leading edge technologies without working together.
Yeah. Still. Okay, we have this interconnected supply chain. Still, there are more and more restrictions coming. Mark, maybe over to you. So you're the boss of the Commission's research department. Of course, research is sometimes perceived as a bit of a world of its own, really at the front here, trying to come up with new technologies and fund them. How do you feel this new reality of restrictions in the world of research?
I'd like to start with the title. You put the emphasis on protecting, what you were already talking about, promoting or partnering with the rest of the world, and also on assets. For our security, and especially economic and beyond, long-term security, we indeed need a lot of assets. But today, looking at the different areas that are really making a difference, that are really shaking up things, think indeed of quantum computing, think of AI and the change in semiconductors. My neighbor here can speak much more about that. Europe clearly is trying to catch up. And here I think that the motto for Europe has to be to build on our scale. And we haven't been doing that enough. We need to do that much, much more. Scale first, get serious about investing enough in research and innovation. We have been lamenting for decades that we are not achieving the 3% target of GDP that we have aimed for, and our competitors are not waiting for us. They are way beyond 3% by now. So we need to scale up the financing together, EU level and member states level. Yesterday, President von der Leyen was at CERN. This international infrastructure, extremely expensive, but also extremely successful in the discoveries that have been made through it for its 70th birthday. And I think this just epitomizes also that we have to look for scale in the infrastructures that we have, the assets, including research assets that we have. Think now of where we were 10 years ago on high-performance computers, nowhere, and where we are now. Simply because we agreed together to pool our resources as Europeans, and now we have 4 of the 10 most potent high-performance computers in the world. This is not about being...
Sorry for interrupting you, but
Yeah.
if you speak about pooling resources, then the Draghi report that said like, okay, we need several hundred billions more to invest in Europe's competitiveness, that must be music to your ears then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know, Mr. Draghi is spot on, arguably on everything. The president of the Commission, I think, has translated this in a very simple formula, that we will be an investment commission. When you talk about investing more in research and innovation, or also in defense, of course, this is about, indeed, making an effort to invest more, to do the green transition, to do the digital transition. It requires speeding up investments for deployment of existing technologies as well.
A famous music band would now sing money, money, money. But let's step back from the money part.
It's not just that, right? I repeat, we need to have a common vision in Europe. Now, think about that area, semiconductors, CHIPS Act. It can be seen, you know, as a glass half full, perhaps by the industry. But at least here, we have the beginning of a strategy for an absolutely key sector for the future. We need the same on artificial intelligence. We need the same on life sciences for the future. So that is what I mean by scale as well, that basically we really, with the member states, develop common visions and put our money then where our mouth is.
To develop that common vision, and we maybe want to jump to you, Maaike, because the question is, of course, like, is it enough to just sprinkle a bit of money everywhere, or do we have to really identify where Europe can be strong and really identify our strengths? I know that Klingendahl has done some research on different areas and where Europe maybe can make the difference. What is your take on what that vision should be?
Yeah, I very much agree indeed that we need a vision for our tech-driven digital society of the future, and where we can make ourselves indispensable to others. I truly love that word. I think that was coined by the Japanese. Make yourself indispensable, so that you have, you know, when you are dependent on certain goods, you develop reverse dependencies as well. And what exactly does that mean? What are the types of products or applications that we would then be aiming for, that we have companies actually profiting also from these tech-driven societies? Because think of it today, much of these profits that are made are really also by American companies. There's a digital deficit, I think, if we look at digital service-related trade and services use, where we are really, not very competitive. So how can we make sure that we invest in the right things in the supply chain so that we can be indispensable, and that we also have our end products that are really essential for our consumers?
And according to you, what are the right things to invest in?
The right things to invest in, yes. Well, looking at the many lists that we see coming out now, I'm a bit worried that we're still not doing the choose and focus. I think the Americans had 4 critical technologies. The Netherlands identified initially 44, and then they trimmed it down to 10. But probably, you know, even 10 is way too much to really, unpack these value chains and see where we can be indispensable to others. So if we focus indeed on about 4, and we invest in this, then I think we would be on the right track. I see a lot of investments already being done in quantum. I think we really have a good chance of still, you know, getting a chunk of the market and being having a part of the value chain where we are indispensable. I see studies also on supply chains that are developing, although we don't have applications yet, so that's very difficult. But there's a chance to be very much ahead of the curve in quantum, I think. And the Netherlands is also encouraging thinking on what potential export controls we will be seeing there in the future. We know that Spain, of course, already in quantum stepped forward with export controls. The Americans are doing the same, but they were the follower, interestingly. So beyond semicon, they have changed in that sense. How can we continue molding that also? So quantum is one. I think biotech is indeed another one, very important. Semicon and photonics will always be important. And AI, and especially generative AI, what are the national security implications of this type of application that everybody now loves to just even prepare perhaps your speaking points, or to draw up an email in a language that you're not so familiar with? They're wonderful for that purpose, but they can also be misused. So this is very much also the core of our security, and that is why I think it's so important to really discuss these in tandem and with private sector, again, because they know where to invest. And I'm a bit worried, and I'll end there. The Netherlands now is investing in sort of, helping companies to scale up from startups to scale-ups, but we are not investing in the next level technologies. So we used to do that. Our current government is not. And then I ask, where's the money coming from?
Okay. I keep in mind AI, also quantum. If we looked at the new commission, and you soon will have a new boss, Mark, there is this new position of an executive vice president for tech sovereignty, Mrs. Virkkunen. In her mission letter, she was told, like, okay, we need an apply AI strategy to really bring AI to the industry. She was also urged to do something with quantum chips, even very new areas. If you look at this position of tech sovereignty and you see these different new initiatives coming, what would your message be for Mrs. Virkkunen to really, in the first 100 days, to make a difference on these areas?
First, get the, well, in all modesty, right?
Yeah. You can tell your boss how it is. Come on, go
Ms.
ahead.
Virkkunen will have her own ideas on this. But certainly, in the mission letter, what I would definitely pick up is the apply AI strategy. Again, we need to have a clear vision on where we really want to put our efforts. And in Europe, certainly, we have not yet missed the train on AI. We have very good assets, yes, absolutely, which we need to harness. And we have, I think, in terms of applications, we have so many more possibilities, in fact, than a country like the US, much more deindustrialized than we are, to really make a leap in our industrial prowess if we apply AI in the most potent way. And the same is true for research itself. I see research from that point of view as one area where you absolutely need to apply AI. This will be a fantastic accelerator of discoveries, no doubt, and we shouldn't be left on the wayside of that. And this is why we will be reflecting specifically on how to really put AI in the best way possible at the disposal of researchers across Europe, which requires indeed computing power, which requires having common data spheres across Europe. So a few things need to be put right. Yeah. And it's not all about money at all. I want to reassure
but also
that.
about, I keep in mind the apply AI strategy is very important. But yesterday, the CEO of SAP told in an interview that he is concerned about the potential of AI in Europe because of overregulation. Any thoughts on that?
I would not venture into that field. Yeah. It's very early days. I think there were also very critical voices on GDPR when GDPR started, and then for some time everyone across the world was in love with GDPR and saw it as the gold standard.
So the jury is still out.
So I think indeed the jury is out, but we need as Europeans, no doubt, to be very attentive, and to be very attentive not to suffocate innovation power. If I can say one more word also on quantum, indeed, where I agree.
Cut you off there, because I find that an interesting point. Very attentive to not suffocate innovation. Let's maybe go to the industry really briefly, because you have to make that innovation happen. If we also look at past years, the chips industry was maybe a bit of a test case for other industries, because indeed there was the CHIPS Act, there was money on the table to make innovation happen, to boost production. Do you think that if we look at the CHIPS Act, this was a success in making sure that this innovation is happening?
So actually, your question is really interesting because it allows me also to answer some of the discussion I heard. There was a lot of discussion about are we putting enough money? How much do we need to put? There is another aspect that is really important is how are we investing well? It's not just the amount, it's speed. When the CHIP Act was created or initiated by the Commission, the AI revolution had not started. And now we are saying, oh, we need chips for AI as well. And the CHIP Act was not designed for that. So we need to be more flexible to adapt to the evolution of industries and semiconductor and digital. And also, you said the CHIP Act was, well, in your question, you said it was created to boost production. I think production is very expensive. Leading edge technology nodes are tens of billions of investment. You also have other aspects in the industry that are really important that I think are a big opportunity for Europe is what I call design. Our industry, the more it goes, the more it's split between companies that design and actually the value, economic value that you mentioned for American companies is mostly actually in what we call fabless companies. They design, and then you have fabrication. So I think Europe has a big opportunity, and we need to adapt the CHIP Act to focus on something that Europe can do really well, which is design.
Yeah. So a new CHIPS Act?
An evolution. The CHIP Act, I'm not saying the CHIP Act was a failure. It's actually great to protect some of our strengths, but we need to focus a bit more on the opportunities that we have in Europe. And Europe is on an engineering standpoint, is used to do things a bit differently. We've designed airplanes differently, and now they are very successful. I think for chips it's the same. The current setup to run AI is only a first step. There needs to be a lot of innovation especially on the power efficiency of the underlying infrastructure of AI that is consuming a lot today. And we need to evolve that, and Europeans are good at this. So I think if we invest in research, in startups as well, to support this kind of innovation, and the CHIP Act should focus on this as well, not just on the leading edge technology development, fabrication capacity. A focus on design is required, I think.
So if someone in the Berlaymont is listening, we need a new CHIPS Act. That is what I
an evolution.
An evolution, CHIPS Act. Maybe fast forward 1 month, a bit more, because then we have the US elections, and we have maybe this cloud or dark cloud of a new Trump presidency. I mean, we've seen the Biden administration was also tough on China on weaponizing tech supply chain, but there was still some discussion with Europe on what to do. We had the EU-US Trade and Technology Council discussing some of the topics, but imagine Trump comes in on November the 8th, I think it is. What should Europe do to prepare, especially on this topic of protecting its assets and making sure that it's not again singled out by the US or pressured by the US to direct China? Maybe Maaike, the Netherlands was singled out by the US. What should Europe now do to act as one bloc when there is a Trump presidency?
Great question. Yeah, I would almost sound like a policymaker, Dutch policymaker, if I echo the words of Yvette van Eeghout just now. Solidarity is, I think, key here. I won't delve into detail on that because that's for her to discuss further. But I think also preparedness on what we don't want to end up in a tit for tat, but knowing that Trump is very much that type of character, we do need to think about, well, if there's certain steps, what would we be doing? And maybe we should even consider taking certain steps even without Trump presidency already doing this. And perhaps the example of knowledge security, this came up in a seminar here in Brussels that I attended yesterday, where I thought it was extremely enlightening to hear from experts in the field of quantum specifically, but this was actually experts and somebody speaking with a lot of broader expertise in the digital tech companies, saying that it's actually odd that we don't have a European sort of answer to the fact that European engineers and workers, skilled workers, are not allowed access to certain elements or issues in US-based companies because they don't have security clearance. This is breaking up teams, and it's not favorable. It's obviously well, to the detriment of those Europeans working in those teams. We are now talking about knowledge security, implement rules towards China, but perhaps also towards the United States. We should be thinking about, well, if with this legislation in place already in the US, what can we how can we also make sure that we still keep open channels, but at the same time also say, hey, we are ready to also impose limitations on access of American citizens if they would be working here. So I'm not saying that this is where we want to go, but having something ready in place to act, and perhaps also putting an extra bonus that should be paid if American companies take somebody from a Dutch or a European university where we have extremely skilled engineers, and we have invested a lot of taxpayer money in that kind of knowledge. If that goes then to US tech companies, I think the companies will be big enough to be able to pay sort of a bonus premium to European universities for that. And I think this is just two examples in a huge field, of course, where you can think of many other issues.
One word that caught my attention was preparedness. Mark, is there inside the Commission a big task force to prepare for a Trump presidency?
I'm not sure the size of the task force is decisive, but definitely we have not waited for the outcome of the elections to prepare for any outcome in that election. I would agree very much with the term solidarity or unity, that we'll have to be very united in our response as Europeans, and we will have to be ready, as much as it might be running against our DNA, because we are integrated with the rest of the world. We want to partner with the rest of the world, and certainly with the United States of America, but we have to be ready also to go for reciprocity.
Yeah. And what does that mean? Are you ready to shut down the access to funding programs? Is that one of the options? Or?
I'm not going to speculate on what that reciprocity would be.
Too bad. We like speculation.
What the response would be about. But certainly, if we are tomorrow in a world that fragments even more, and where more and more hurdles go up to trade, to knowledge, to talent, and so on, we will have to redouble our efforts to make Europe the place to be, to do things. You mentioned talent. I think we have absolutely to be obsessed with making Europe attractive, not only for the people who get their education in Europe and then who look around to see where they would want to pursue their researchers' careers or entrepreneurial careers, but also to attract the talent from outside. Draghi said it, demography is not good for Europe, so we need to be also attractive for people coming from outside. We need, I haven't mentioned that yet, and it is very much related to these areas where we have huge potential. I mentioned quantum. We need to have a vibrant startup scene in Europe. And for that, again, we need scale. The scale of the single market, Mr. Letter was speaking here before. Look at what the Draghi report says. A lot of our startups are then moving to the United States because there they know they have a market, so a big market.
You're happy that your
our market is not yet sufficiently integrated to do that. In terms of who to support from the startup scene, we hope through at least the limited European means that we have, that we are going for the very risky, but really the disruptive type
deep tech
of startups.
Yeah.
Call them deep techs, if you want. We have quite a growing portfolio, in fact, of very young quantum companies now, supported by the means we have. It's called the European Innovation Council. That means, and we intend to double down on that absolutely, which doesn't mean that national governments shouldn't do the same. So
you mentioned startups a lot. Are you happy that your new boss, the Bulgarian Commission nominee, is also the startup commissioner?
I'm extremely excited about it.
Okay.
Because I think what we need is basically two things. My colleague here from ARM mentioned one. We need to be in dialogue in order to have the best possible partnerships with our industry. That is to team up with what already exists in Europe and what we can build up. But we also need to have a much more dynamic generator of new companies, no doubt. Draghi was making that point again. In Europe, you have among the companies that have a capitalization of more than 100 billion euros, you don't have one company which was created within the last 50 years. Yeah. In the US, the 6th largest company by capitalization have all been created more recently than that. And it demonstrates that in Europe, we also need, the newcomers.
Yeah, we need newcomers.
We need both.
Yeah, I'm going to cap you off because I still wanted to get on the whole Trump presidency and maybe more restrictions, more tit for tat coming. You're a global company. You really have to navigate the fact that US, UK, they can act really quickly based on national security grounds. Brussels doesn't have that competency, is maybe not always united on that front. Is that a disadvantage for Brussels?
I wouldn't believe so. First of all, as you said, we are a global company, and we tend to just adapt, and we follow the rules. So our influence is quite low in that front. So my experience is that, and I was reading something this morning in my day job that is I'm managing the French entity. It was about getting people back into the office, and the article was basically explaining, and I've seen it, that if you use the stick or the carrot works much better. And so for what you are explaining, for talent, for startups, people are attracted to America because they see an incentive, an added value, successful businesses, valuation of the company gives you a financial benefit as an employee, interesting technologies, etc. So I think Europe should really look at being attractive. And I think that's where we should focus on. And then restriction, we'll have to adapt to them. But I think attracting and creating an incentive, an environment that is friendly is really what I think works best.
Yeah. So the best defense is offense, you say, and
yeah.
Okay. If we do this panel maybe like in 5 years again, what would your answer be on the question like, okay, have we now successfully protected and promoted our critical tech assets? Michael, let's start with you.
I hope that I would be able to say, I guess, that, well, we did the protection before 2024, so that was pretty good. But by now, we have indeed invested in not just startups, but scale-ups, because this is what I hear actually is the bigger problem than startups, because we have such a vibrant research environment in Europe. That we have also invested in, better collaboration with the private sector, and that we've overcome the decoupling that we did from the public and private sectors in this time of globalization. I would hope that we then also have chief geopolitical officers at every company, so that our new commissioners with far more techie portfolios than before have counterparts at every company, and that we have been talking about the strategic vision and that we're well underway with joint investments from public and private sector in areas that make us indispensable.
Is that an idea for a chief geopolitical officer?
You always have somebody that plays that role without the name.
And your thoughts on in 5 years? When are we successful?
Yeah, I think I can really second what you said. For me, it's time for focusing on opportunities and not defending our strengths. We've done a lot of work to defend our strengths. The CHIP Act is a good example. Now we have to invest in opportunities, and success will be if we have, like you said, many scale-ups or unicorns in Europe that didn't exist 10 years ago that become world leaders. ARM is an example of a company like this in Europe, but there are not that many. We should really create an environment. We have plenty of those.
Yeah. Mark, final word, because we have 1 minute left.
Well, I hope in 5 years' time we will indeed be running at the front of the pack on AI applications across the economy, on quantum, no doubt, on life sciences and biotech. We have all we need for that, and indeed that we would also see a much denser landscape in terms of startups and scale-ups, and probably a lot of them in those areas.
Okay, great. I would say let's see each other in 5 years, but that's not what is at stake at the moment. What is at stake at the moment is that you are all urged to remain seated, because we have a panel after this. I first want to thank all my speakers. Thanks for being here. And the next panel is about another very critical element of the supply chain, that's critical raw materials, and that will be led by the trade reporter, trade colleague Koen Verhelst. Thank you very much.